Hello everyone. On the occasion of World Heritage Day, National Rail Museum would like to share the facts about unification of Indian railways. Transportation of men and material has played a vital role in the development of nations. Railways were the first bulk carrying organized transport industry which brought profound political and socio-economic changes first in the Western world and then in their respective colonies. The introduction and development of railways in India by the British in the first 100 years was determined more by their strategic, imperialist, exploitive, and administrative policies than by the need of economic development of India. But this could not withhold the Indians from availing themselves on the multifarious advantages of the rail travel and transport. The Indian Railways are the biggest enterprise in the country today. When various private companies started constructing the railway network in the second half of the 19th century, they were, at that time, also the biggest enterprises in the country in terms of capital investment, turnover, manpower, employment, technical and management skills. In India, the railways paved the way of the Industrial Revolution. The first steam railway train was run in England around 1825. And surprisingly, 20 years later, the plan for extensive railway network in India was taking shape. In 1853, the first train ran over a stretch of 34 kilometers, and within 50 years, the Indian Railway had a route length of over 43,000 kilometers. This phenomenal growth of the railways in India was coordinated by varied and complex forces of necessity and compulsion, which included commercial, political, defense, and financial objectives. Whatever benefits the Indians derived from the introduction of railways were incidental. The railways were planned to serve the needs of the British industries by supplying cheap raw material and by opening colonial markets for the consumption of finished products. The railways were the tools for consolidating the expanding British Empire in India and for suitably handling internal insurgency and foreign threats. Most of the railway construction was done by private British companies who functioned from their head office in England. The construction policy, the investment decisions, and the day to day management of the railways in India were based on the principles of economic exploitation of the country's resources. Concessions were given to the British companies to safeguard their economic interest. The priority of routes were fixed to cater to the specific needs of the British industries. Despite their enthusiasm and capabilities, the Indians were never allowed to invest capital in railway ventures. They were even debarred from manufacturing and supplying of railway machinery and equipment, and they were denied managerial positions in the railway companies. The odds were so much in favor of the British investors and industrialists that crucial decisions, both secret and open, were taken by the British Secretary of State for India, ignoring the views and protest of even the government of India, who did make occasional attempts to look after the interest of the natives. Despite being a tool of the imperial colonialism, there is no denying the fact that the sheer speed and magnitude of the railway network expansion, the magnificent skills displayed by the British engineers and Indian labor, braving the epidemics and wild beasts, were commendable. Railways were constructed mainly by four agencies. First, 5% guaranteed private British companies. Second, the state. Third, private companies with modified guarantee terms. Fourth, by the native rulers. The East Indian Railway System spanned the northern sector of India, the Great Indian Peninsular Railway System, and the Bombay, Baroda, and Central Indian Railway System, which we call as by BBNCI, created network in the western and central sectors. The Madras and South Maratha Railway System and the South Indian Railway System took charge of the southern sector. Bengal Nagpur railway system contributed an alternate route from west to east and covered the eastern coast sector. The formation, growth, development of the Great Indian Peninsular System, which included the Great Indian Peninsular Railway, Bhopal State Railway, the Indian Midland Railway, the Dhond Manmat State Railway, Khamgao and Amravati Railways, Mohapani and Wardha Coal Railways, and to some extent the Nizam State Railway from 1853 to 1925, and the suburban services in Bombay. By the next 1920, there were 175 railways in India divided into 14 classes. One can witness to the secret deals being struck and also cannot fail to appreciate the state of helplessness of the then government of India and the crescendo of the resentment of the Indian nationalist leaders who ultimately succeeded in starting the process of Indianization of the railway system in the 1920s. In the 19th centuries, railways witnessed rapid expansion. In the first half of the 20th century, railways suffered from the ravages of World War I, which was from 1914 to 18, World Depression of 1930s, then World War II, which happened from 1939 to 45, and finally the partition of the country, which happened in 1947. This all resulted into undergoing takeovers, amalgamations, regrouping, and reorganizations. The subject of regrouping of Indian railways has been engaging the attention of the railway board. Certain investigations were made and tentative proposals formulated, but no concrete steps towards the regrouping of Indian government railways could be taken until the state could take over the company managed railways on the expiry of their contracts. The division of the ex-Northwestern and the ex-Bengal Assam railways on partition during 1947-48 left two small systems which for the time being had to be reconstituted into the Eastern Punjab and Assam railways and operated as separate units. Particularly in view of this, the reorganization of the railways in northern India was rendered necessary. But the federal financial integration, bringing with it the integration of the railways of the Indian states, not only afforded an opportunity to plan regrouping on comprehensive lines, but also in view of the multiplicity of the units, made the regrouping of the existing units to form a fewer but larger systems imperative. Finally, in 1950, the Railway Board, after careful consideration and study, prepared a plan of regrouping Indian railways into six zonal systems. They were the northern, northeastern, eastern, southern, central, and western. The scheme was circulated in June 1950 to the state governments, Chamber of Commerce, Railway Labor Organization, and the public for eliciting opinion. The views received from these agencies were examined, and the proposal for the regrouping of Indian railways was approved by the Central Advisory Council for Railways in December 1950. The process of regrouping of railways commenced with the inauguration of the Southern Railway on 14th April 1951, as approved by the Central Advisory Council. The Southern Railways, with its headquarters at the Madras, and the route mileage of 6,000 was formed by the amalgamation of the Madras and Southern Maharashtra, the South Indian, and the Mysore State Railways. The Central and the Western Railways, both with their headquarters at Bombay, were formed on 5th November 1951. The Central Railway was formed by merging into the Great Indian Peninsular Railway, the Nizam State, the Dholpur and the Sindhia State Railways. The Western Railway was formed by combining the BBNCI, Saurashtra, Kutch, Rajasthan, and Jaipur State Railways, along with the short section Marwar Fular of the Jodhpur Railway. Finally, in the next 50 years, we have seen the rehabilitation, consolidation, and growth of Indian railways to boost the Indian economy by facilitating growth in the industrial, agriculture, and rural sectors. Thank you so much for your patience and attention.